In this video, we'll go over the basics of Git. So I'm assuming that you have no idea what Git is. Let me tell you. Git is a free and open source distributed version control system. It tracks file changes within your project. You can revert back to any version at any time and works locally on your machine. But it can be pushed to a remote repo or repository, such as GitHub. Now this is where some people get confused. Git and GitHub are two different things. GitHub is a cloud-based storage solution for your project code. Git combined with GitHub allows collaboration between multiple developers on one project, and it's used to coordinate work between developers. Each developer will have a version of the code stored locally. Git also tracks who made what changes. Now let's look at the requirements. In order to use Git, you'll have to install Git, and you'll need to set up a GitHub account if a remote repository is needed. Even if a remote repository isn't needed, I would still suggest setting up a GitHub account. They're free, it's a good way to back up your code, and you should just get used to it. Start using it because once you start working with a team, it's going to come in handy. And of course, you're going to need a code editor. Any editor is fine, but I would recommend Visual Studio Code. If you missed my beginner's VS Code video, I'll put a link on the screen and in the description below. And lastly, you're going to need a browser, of course. I recommend Chrome. In my opinion, Chrome has the best developer tools. Alright, now, command line versus GUI. GUI stands for Graphical User Interface. Just about every program that you use has a GUI, but Git was built for the command line. There are GUIs for Git, but I highly recommend that you first learn to use Git from the command line. I know some people see that black screen and that blinking cursor and they freak out, but it's really not that difficult. There are only a few commands that you'll have to learn. So learn the basic commands, and once you get used to them and you're comfortable with them, then maybe start using a GUI. So the first part of the video, I'll demonstrate how to use Git from the command line, and then we'll review the integrated Git features of VS Code. Alright, now installing Git. On Windows and Mac, you'll want to go to git-scm.com/download/win or Mac depending on your system. For Linux, a couple of popular versions are Debian and Ubuntu. You'd use the apt-get command. And for Fedora, depending on which version you would have, you would use yum or dnf. Alright, so let's look at some basic commands. Now, these commands you'll want to use in your terminal. Now, on Linux and Mac, that's pretty straightforward. But on Windows, when you install Git, it will install a new command line program called Git Bash. Now, I would recommend either using Git Bash or the built-in command line in VS Code. We're going to briefly review these basic commands, but this is the last slide. After this, we'll get some hands-on and I'll demonstrate each of these for you. So the first one is git init. This will initialize a local Git repository in your project folder and will create a .git folder. And the next one is git add and then the file name, and this adds files to the staging area. The next one is git status, and this checks the status of the working tree. Git commit. This commits changes in the staging area. The next few commands will be for remote repositories, such as GitHub. Git push pushes your local repository to a remote repository, such as GitHub. Git pull. This pulls the latest version from a remote repository. Git clone allows you to clone a remote repository locally. And then there's branching, which I'll explain later, but git branch and then the branch name creates a new branch. Git checkout and then the branch name switches to that branch. And then git merge and the branch name will merge a branch with another. Now I'll quickly go through the Windows installation. We'll hit next. The defaults on this screen are good. Next. Now if you're using VS Code, I would suggest changing this to use Visual Studio Code as Git's default editor. If not, the default is fine. Hit next. The rest of the defaults are all fine. Just keep hitting next. And then install. And I'll uncheck the notes and we'll launch Git Bash. I'm also going to open up the default Windows command line and show you that you can use Git in either of these. So what we can do is we can type git space -- version, and that will give us our current version. We'll do the same thing here. And you can see it works in either of them. From now on, we're going to be using Git Bash or the built-in terminal in VS Code. Alright, I'm going to create a new folder here on the desktop and I'll name it Git Tutorial. I'm going to right click on that folder and git bash here. That opens up the bash terminal. Let me make the font size a little bit bigger. And now we're going to create a couple of files in this folder. So we'll do touch index.html and app.js. Alright, now I'm going to right click on that folder again, and I'm going to open with Visual Studio Code. Alright, so now you can see that we have our project folder open, and you can see the two files that we created, app and index. So we're going to open the index.html file, and I'm going to generate a blank HTML template using init, and we will change the title to Git tutorial. In the body we'll add an H1 Git tutorial. Alright, I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to open the integrated terminal using Control tilde, and we're going to use our first git command here. We will do git init. Now if I open the project folder, you're not going to see anything different here. So it did add a .git folder, but it's hidden. So in Windows you may have to go to View and then Show Hidden Items, and then now you can see the folder. I also like to see the file name extensions. And there is nothing that you would ever want to do inside of this Git folder. I just wanted to show you that it's there. So the next thing we need to do is set some configuration settings in Git. So we're going to do git config -- global, and then the username, and put that in quotes. And then the next thing we'll set, instead of username, will be email. Alright, and we can clear that. And now we could do git status and see where we're at, and make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so we can see here that we are on the master branch, no commits yet, and there's a couple of untracked files. So what we'll want to do next is add those files. So we'll start with index.html, we'll do git add index.html, and then let's look at the status again, git status, and now you see that we have a file that's being tracked, index.html. Now if we want to remove that file, we don't want to track that file, we could do git rm -- cached, and then the name of the file. And then we can do git status again, and we see that it's untracked again. There are different ways to add files. We could do git add star.html, and that would add every HTML file. Or we could just do git add period. Let's do that, and then let's do git status. And now you see that that adds everything in the directory. Okay, so now that we have these files in here and they're being tracked, I'm going to make a change to the HTML document. I'm going to add a paragraph with some dummy text. Now I'm going to save that, and we'll go back into our terminal, and let's do git status. And now you'll see that we're tracking two files, but one of these files have been modified. So what we need to do to get those modifications in the staging area, we need to do another git add dot. And now let's do git status. And now you can see both files are ready in the staging area. Alright, so now let's do a git commit. We're going to commit these changes. So we'll do git commit. And now you'll see in VS Code, it's asking us to enter a message. This is for us to let everyone know what this commit is for. What did we do? So we will say added paragraph. And you'll notice here these hashtags or number symbols. These are comments. So if we were to take one of these out, then this would be in the message. Adding the comment means it will not be in the message. Okay, so now I want to save this, and then close the window. And now let's do git status. And you see we're on master branch and nothing to commit, working tree clean. So now let's open the app.js, and let's add some JavaScript in here. We'll do a console log. We'll just say hello world. Let's save that. And then we'll go back into our terminal and let's get a status here. And we'll see that app.js was modified. So to get that back in the staging area, let's do a git add all. We can do git status to see what that did. Shows us that the app.js is ready for commit. So this time when we commit, we're going to do it a little differently. We're going to do git commit -m. M is for message, so we can enter our message directly here in line. So we'll say added console log, enter, and we can see that it added that commit. And do a git status, and nothing to commit, working tree clean. All right, let's clear that. All right, now if I wanted to see the previous commits, I could do git log. You'll see the latest commit at the top. So the last thing we did was we added console log to the app.js, and the first thing we did was we added paragraph to the HTML document. So if we wanted to go back to one of these, so let's go back to where we added the paragraph. Let's go to that commit. We could do git checkout, and then you just have to type in the first few characters of the commit ID. So that one is 03F4F589, enter. And if you notice in app.js, the code that we wrote in there is now gone. That's because that was not there in the first commit. That was there in the second commit. So if we do git log again, now we don't see that second commit that we did because it hasn't been committed yet. So we need to go back to our second commit. We'll do git checkout master, and then we can do git log. And you can see that the code now in app.js is back. We're now on the latest version again. Alright, so far in the integrated terminal here in VS Code, by default it is using Windows PowerShell. I prefer to change that, and we're going to select default shell, and we're going to select git bash. I'm going to kill this terminal and press Ctrl+ again to open a new terminal, and now we have git bash within VS Code. Okay, now what if we have a file or a folder within our project that we don't want Git to look at? We don't want it to be part of the version control. What we could do is add a .gitignore file. So in the terminal, I'm going to type touch.gitignore, and that creates that .gitignore file for me. Now let's also create a log.txt. So we don't want Git to track the versions of log.txt. So let's go into the text file and let's just add something here. Here are some logs, and I'm going to save that. And then we'll go into the gitignore file, and I'm going to add log.txt. That's all we have to do, log.txt. I'm going to save that. And now in the terminal, if I do git status, you'll see that it does not show the log.txt file. Let me go back here and delete that from the gitignore, and let's do git status again, and you now see that it shows the log.txt file. Let's put that back in there. We don't want it to track log.txt. And how about some directories? So in the project here, we're going to add a new folder. We'll name this folder do not track, and let's add another folder, and this one will be track. And let's add some files here. We'll add an index HTML here, and we'll add one here as well. Now if we go to the terminal and do git status, you'll see that it now sees those new directories. So let's go back to our, we can close these files. Let's go to our gitignore. And now let's add the do not track directory, and we'll save that. All right, now let's do git status. Now you see it's only looking at the track folder. So now we could do git add all, and then status, and the gitignore and the track with its index.html are ready to be committed. So let's go ahead and do that. Git commit -m to add a message, and we will say added directory. Alright, so let's do git status, and we see working tree is clean. Alright, so now let's talk about branches. So let's say you're working with a team with other developers and you're assigned a task. Well, you don't want to make changes to the master branch. You're going to want to create your own branch. So let's say that you're given the task to add some list items to the HTML body. So the first thing you'd want to do is to create the branch. So in the terminal, we'll do git branch and then the name of the branch. So let's say list items. Alright, so now let's do a git status. And you see that we're still on the master branch. And now if you're in VS Code, you can actually see that here in the bottom left that we're on the master branch. So now we need to switch to the branch that we created. So to do that, we'll do git checkout and then the name of the branch, list items, and that switched us. Now a shortcut, if we wanted to create the branch and go to it, we could have done git checkout -b and then list items. Now we've already created list items, so I'm not going to run this, but the -b tells it to create the branch. So now let's do another git status, and you'll see that we are on the list items branch. Alright, so let's make our edits. We're going to add a UL and LI, and let's just say list item 1, and we'll use Alt-Shift down to duplicate that a few times. 2, 3, and 4. And let's save that. And now in our terminal, let's do a git status, and you'll see that index.html has been modified. So we need to add that to our staging area. So we'll do git add all, and then we can do git status again and see that it is staged and ready to go. I'm using git status a lot just to show you guys you don't have to continuously hit git status. Alright, so now let's commit that. So we'll do git commit -m to add an inline message, and we will say added list items. So that has been committed. So now we are still on the list items branch. Let's go back to the master branch and see what happens. So we'll do git checkout master, and notice in the HTML document that the list that we created is gone. That's because it is not on this branch. So if we do git checkout list items, go back to that branch, you'll see that they came back. Alright, so now let's merge these two branches. So we've finished our task and we need to merge that back into the master branch. Let me clear this. So to do that, we have to be on the branch we want it to merge into. So we'll go back to the master branch, git checkout master, and then we'll do git merge list items. And now we're on the master branch, and you see the list items are there. So it has been successfully merged. Alright, so now let's talk about remote repositories. Alright, so we will go to GitHub and let me sign in. Alright, so now we will add a new repository here in the top right. New repository. And we're going to name it Git Tutorial, and the description, Git Beginners Tutorial. We'll create the repository, and this is what we need here. We need to copy this URL, and then let's go back to VS Code. So now if we type git remote, you'll see that nothing is there. If we look back at GitHub here, it tells us to push an existing repository through the command line. We'll do git remote add origin and then the URL. So we could actually copy that. Let's go back to VS Code and we can paste. So git remote add origin and then the URL. That configures this local Git repository to connect to the GitHub repository. And then git push -u origin master. So that is going to push the master branch to GitHub. Alright, so let's go back to GitHub. If we go to the repository, you'll see the items that we had locally are now here online. So let's add a README file. In GitHub, README files are actually very important. They help anyone who comes to a repository to see what it's about and how it works and what's going on with it. Alright, so let's create the README file. So we'll do touch, and it needs to be in all uppercase, README, and then .md, lowercase. MD stands for Markdown. And I'm not going to go over Markdown in this video, but we're going to add some Markdown here, and we'll say Git beginners tutorial. This is a tutorial. We'll save that, and now in the terminal I can do a status, I can spell, and you'll see that it's untracked, so we need to do a git add all, and we can do a status again if you'd like, and we can see that it's now ready. Alright, so now we'll do a git commit -m, and we will say added readme. Alright, so that's been committed, and now we need to push it to the GitHub repository. So we will do git push. Alright, so now if we go back to GitHub, and let's refresh this, and now you see the README file, and on GitHub, README files show up at the bottom here automatically. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to clone a repository. So instead of initializing a repository locally, you can start with a repository online. So we'll go to GitHub, and here's the repository that we created. So I'm going to clone or download, and I'm going to copy this link again. And then if I go back to the desktop, I'm going to create a new folder, and we'll say repo example2. Then I'm going to right click there and git bash here. And we'll use the git clone command, and then we'll paste that link here. And to paste, shift insert. Alright, so that pulled the Git tutorial repo into this directory, so we have it in two separate places now, and everything is there. So what I could do is I could right click on this and open in VS Code. And I'm going to arrange these a bit. Close the sidebar by pressing Ctrl B. So now we have this repository stored locally on our computer in two separate areas. So we have two separate instances of this repository on our computer. On the left we have the repository that is on the desktop, and then on the right we have the one that is on the desktop within the file repo example2 that we created. So now we're going to pretend that these are two separate developers. The developer on the left is going to be tasked with editing the H1. So what that developer is going to want to do, since we don't want multiple people editing the master branch, this developer is going to create a separate branch. So we'll do this the short way. We'll use git checkout, and we'll use -b to create the branch if it's not there, and we'll name this one task1. Enter. So now if you look at the bottom left corner, see that we're not on the master branch anymore. We created task1 and switched to it. So now this developer was tasked to add awesome to the H1, awesome git tutorial. Okay, I'm going to save that, and now we can do git status, and we see that we have a modification. So we'll do git add all, and we'll do git status again to show you. It's staged and ready to be committed. Okay, so now we'll do a git commit -m, and we'll say edited H1. Alright, that's been committed. Alright, so now on the developer 2, we could do a git pull, and you'll see that we are already up to date. This is the latest. So we're still on the master branch, so we're not going to see the changes that developer 1 made. Now for this developer, they're going to want to create a branch as well. So we'll do git checkout -b to create the branch, and we'll say task2. Alright, so we created that branch and we switched to it. And now this developer was tasked with adding another list item. So I'll use Alt-Shift down arrow to duplicate that one, change it to 5. We'll save that. And now we know that this has been edited, so we need to add it to the staging area. So we'll do git add all, and now that's added to the staging area. We can do git commit -m, and we'll say added li. So now back to developer 1. Let's merge those branches. So we're on task 1. We need to switch back to the master branch. So we'll do git checkout master. Okay, now we've switched, and you see that awesome Git tutorial is gone now. So now we'll do git merge, and that was task 1. So we've merged task 1. So now we merged those branches locally. We now need to push those to GitHub. So we'll do a git push. Go back to the second developer. We will switch back to the master branch as well. So git checkout master. And here we can do a git pull. And now we have the first developer's changes in the second developer's repository. Now the second developer is going to merge their branch. So we'll do a git merge, and that was task 2. Now again, that was merged locally, so now we need to push that. So we'll do a git push. So now on developer 2's repository, we have list item 5 and awesome. On developer 1's, we have awesome, but we still don't have the second list item. So developer 1 can do a git pull, and now they have list item 5 as well. Alright, now, like I said earlier, get used to the command line. And once you are familiar with it and you're comfortable with it, then maybe start using a GUI. So I'm going to go over the integrated Git features in VS Code. In the sidebar, we have a source control panel, and you'll see there are no changes currently. So if we go here and let's add another list item, Alt-Shift down, change that to 6, and then hit save. Now you'll see that index.html shows up as modified. It has the m at the end. So what we can do now is we can click this plus button, and that will stage the changes. So that is the same as doing git add all. So now we have our changes staged, and now we can commit. And VS Code prompts us to enter our message. So we'll say added another list item, enter, and now that has been committed. Now it's ready to be pushed to GitHub. So if you click the ellipses, you can see all of the other commands. So we can do a git push, and now that has pushed it to GitHub. At the bottom here, you'll see, again, we have the master branch. So if we want to change branches, I can click on master, and you'll see here the different branches that we've created. So if we wanted to switch to one of these, we could switch back to task 1. And task 1 didn't have item 5 or item 6, so now those have disappeared. And I can click on task 1 again and go back to the master branch just like that. Now if we look at the Explorer and we see our files, let's switch back to task 1 branch. And in task 1 branch, we're going to add a new file, and I'm going to name it styles.css. Then we'll just do something simple. Alright, I'm going to save that. Now if we go to our source control, so this is a new file, you can see that this is untracked. So now if we right click on this, we could add it to the git ignore from this menu, or we can go ahead and stage the changes. Okay, so now that is staged. Let's say we forgot to add our padding, and then let's save that. And now it says that those initial changes are staged, but the new changes have not been. So let's stage the new changes as well. And now we're ready to commit. Add our message. Added CSS file. Alright, now that is committed. And we can do a git push. And now that's on GitHub as well. So if we go back to the Explorer, we'll see that this branch, task 1, has the styles.css file. So now if I switch back to the master branch, notice that the file disappears and it says it's been deleted. That's because it's not in this branch. So now here's one downside of VS Code. If we go to source control and we click on the ellipsis and you look through here, there is no merge command. So we still have to use the command line in order to merge. So we'll go to the command line and we'll do a git merge and we'll do task 1. And now you'll notice that styles.css is now in the master branch. Since we're here in the terminal, I'll just go ahead and do a git push. And then that updates GitHub. So I hope this video was helpful. It should at least get you started with the basics of Git. Keep learning, keep practicing, and don't give up. So that's all that we'll go over in this video. As always, if you liked this video, a thumbs up is appreciated. Subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks for watching.